Have you ever really stopped and thought, really thought, about what happens if everything just stops? The power grid goes down, not for a few hours, but like permanently. Technology fails. It's a pretty unsettling idea, right? One we usually try not to dwell on. Well, today we're going to take a deep dive into something designed exactly for that kind of scenario. It's a guide called Blast-Proof David's Shield, and it basically claims to offer a solid plan, a strategy for protecting your family if the grid fails and things get chaotic. So our mission here is to really unpack this system based on the information we've looked at. We want to explore what it's really about, its approach to survival, and what makes it different according to the creator and the folks who've used it. It's about understanding the what, the why, and the core ideas behind it so you can get a sense of what it offers. Okay, so let's start with the core idea here. This blast-proof David's Shield system, it seems to be built around a pretty huge assumption: the potential collapse of modern society as we know it.
Exactly. The information points towards major triggers like an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse, or maybe other big systemic failures.
So not just a storm knocking out power for a bit, we're talking bigger picture.
Much bigger. It's framed as preparing for scenarios where the basics just disappear. And what's really interesting is how they frame the threats. They specifically mention EMPs and systemic breakdowns, sure, but they also tap into this wider concern about technology becoming unreliable, our growing dependence on AI controlling things.
So there's a vulnerability angle there too.
Yeah.
And how connected everything is.
Precisely. And there's another layer, quite distinct actually. The material suggests the system helps you prepare for or withstand what some biblical interpretations call the beast system, this idea from the book of Revelation.
Okay, that adds a whole different dimension compared to typical survival stuff.
It does. It suggests this system isn't just about physical survival, like having enough food and water, but about thriving spiritually and ethically with faith and wisdom, even if society crumbles around you, making your home a real sanctuary.
Right. So given these pretty ambitious claims, who's the person behind it, the information mentions a Henry Morris, described as a seasoned survival expert.
That's the name provided, yes. Henry Morris. He's presented as someone with, real hands-on experience, less about academic theory, more about practical knowledge gained from actually dealing with crises.
Learned in the field, so to speak.
That's the impression, yeah. Someone who understands self-sufficiency from the ground up. And this background seems to shape the whole program's focus on actionable, down-to-earth steps.
And it's pitched as being different from other programs out there.
Definitely. It emphasizes being accessible, not requiring tons of money or complicated gadgets. That seems to be a key differentiator they highlight.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. Because so many survival guides are about the gear, right? Stockpiling complex equipment. But this David's Shield guide explicitly says it's not like that. So what is the unique approach? How does it actually differ?
Well, connecting the dots, it seems to blend a few things in a pretty unique way. There are like 3 pillars. Biblical wisdom is one. Then practical survival skills. And interestingly, knowledge drawn from the Amish way of life.
The Amish. Okay, tell me more about that connection.
It makes sense when you think about it. The Amish have intentionally lived a low-tech, self-sufficient lifestyle for centuries, right? So the program seems to draw on that deep well of practical, non-electric know-how.
So it's challenging the idea that you need all the latest high-tech stuff to be prepared.
Exactly. It kind of flips the script. It suggests maybe true resilience isn't about complex gear that could fail anyway, but about getting back to basics, using community wisdom, and having that spiritual grounding.
Faith and knowledge over expensive tech.
That seems to be the core message, yeah. Preparedness being about how you think and what, maybe more than just what you own.
It sounds very thorough. More holistic than just physical stuff. So if it's not about the fancy gear, what does this look like day to day? How does it actually help someone, protect their home, find food and water, build that safe space when things are chaotic? Can we get into some specific examples from the guide?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the key question, isn't it? How does it work practically? The information lays out a step-by-step approach for different areas. Take EMP protection, for instance. Instead of buying expensive pre-made Faraday cages, the guide apparently shows you how to build your own.
To build your own. How?
Using simple stuff. Things you might already have, like metal trash cans, maybe certain kinds of foil. The idea is low-cost, accessible ways to shield essential electronics, a radio, maybe some medical gear.
Okay, that makes sense. Resourceful. What about basic needs, like food and water?
Right, self-sufficiency skills. So think preserving food without a fridge, The guide covers methods like fermenting, pickling, maybe building a simple root cellar using the ground's natural temperature.
Old school techniques.
Very old school, but effective. For water, it teaches filtering methods that don't need electricity, using layers of sand, charcoal, cloth things you could potentially source yourself.
And light and heat, if the power's out long term.
Same principle. Basic materials. Making simple oil lamps, maybe instructions for building an efficient wood stove or rocket stove for heat and cooking, using what's available.
And security. Protecting your home and supplies without relying on, say, modern alarms.
Yeah, the survival tactics part covers that. It talks about using natural defenses, maybe reinforcing doors and windows simply, creating hidden storage, setting up low-tech alerts. The focus seems to be on smart, practical security that doesn't depend on technology that might fail or resources that might become scarce.
Which loops back to the Amish influence, I guess.
Precisely. That's where those methods really come in, applying their principles for growing food effectively, maybe storing some medicines without refrigeration, building simple, durable systems that just plain work without electricity.
It's like tapping into this knowledge base that's been proven over generations.
That seems to be the idea, distilling that wisdom. And then there's the other big piece,
Yep.
the spiritual and practical readiness. It's not just about the physical stuff. The information highlights that the guide emphasizes leading your family with faith, calm, and wisdom through the chaos.
So mental and spiritual strength is just as important as the practical skills.
Absolutely. It's presented as a complete package, mind, body, spirit, to build genuine resilience. Addressing morale, clear thinking under pressure, that's quite different from just a list of gear, isn't it?
It really is. And you mentioned affordability and accessibility earlier. That seems key here.
The information stresses that. It's apparently designed for average families, regardless of budget, focusing on empowerment through knowledge and skills, not expensive gadgets.
It really drives home that idea. Resilience from knowing and doing, not just owning. Okay, so we've talked through the concepts, the how it works. But what about real people? What's the experience like for someone who actually uses this guide? We looked at some feedback from people who bought it, right? What did they say? How did it actually help them?
Yeah, that feedback gives some really interesting insights into how it lands with people. There was one woman, Sarah. She said she'd bought loads of prepping guides before, but this was the only one that really made sense to her.
Which sense how?
She loved the blend, the biblical side combined with what she called practical, no-nonsense advice. She specifically mentioned learning to prepare without relying on expensive tech that could just break.
And the result for her?
She said it gave her real peace of mind, knowing her family was prepared in a way that felt sustainable, not dependent on fragile systems.
Okay, that's powerful. Any other examples?
Yes, another person, Lisa. She had a direct experience. A big blizzard knocked out power for 9 days where she lived.
9 days. Wow.
Yeah. And she credited the David's Shield strategies for helping her family stay calm and, well, surprisingly comfortable through it all.
What specifically helped?
She mentioned the off-grid heat and food storage tips were lifesavers. While neighbors were struggling, they were apparently okay because they had these low-tech solutions ready to go. It worked when the grid failed.
That's a pretty strong testament to the practical side.
It is. And then there was Emily, who's a pastor. Her perspective was interesting.
How so?
She felt the system aligned perfectly with the teachings she shares. She found the mix of the biblical foundation and the practical advice really valuable, not just for her own family, but for guiding others in her congregation.
So it resonated on a community and leadership level, too.
Seems so. She specifically recommended it for, in her words, any Christian man looking to lead his family through uncertain times. It really underscores that focus on faith, family, and spiritual strength.
These accounts definitely seem to back up the program's core message, don't they?
They really do. Peace of mind, practical solutions that work off-grid, rooted in faith, and accessible without breaking the bank.
It paints a picture of resilience built from knowledge and preparedness from within, rather than just buying a lot of stuff.
So, to wrap up our deep dive today, we've explored blast-proof David's Shield, looked at its core idea of preparing for major societal disruption. We've unpacked its pretty unique blend of biblical principles, hands-on survival skills, and those interesting methods inspired by the Amish. And the whole goal seems to be equipping families not just to survive, but maybe even thrive through tough times using knowledge and accessible techniques, not relying on expensive or complex technology.
Which leaves us with a final thought, perhaps, for you listening. In a world that feels increasingly complex and definitely more reliant on interconnected technology, How might turning back to ancient wisdom, to simpler, self-sufficient skills like those proposed in David's Shield, how might that offer a different kind of resilience, maybe a more enduring kind than what our modern world usually values? Something to think about.